She shot to global fame for doing a headstand on the summit of Everest. For Guan Jing, it seemed, nothing was beyond her reach. But when she took on the merciless K2, the mountain laid a trap for her, just not where anyone expected. She survived the death zone, pushed through icy avalanches, only to die in a place where climbers usually breathe a sigh of relief. How could the ultimate triumph turn into a fatal fluke just moments from safety? Guan Jing's story begins in Qidong County in China's Hunan province, the very same region that gave the world Mao Zedong. Rice terraces, mountains shrouded in mist, and a silence so profound you can almost touch it. But to this day, we don't know Guan Jing's exact date of birth. It's as if someone deliberately erased every trace of her past. What made her leave China? That's a question that may never be answered. All we know is that, as an adult, Guan crossed the Pacific and ended up in San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley. The Bay Area, a place where millionaires live alongside the homeless, where startups are born in garages, and a dream can cost you more than a house. It's here, within the Chinese diaspora, that Guan finds her niche. She becomes a yoga instructor. Her mornings are filled with yoga mats, incense, and sun salutations. Asanas, breathing exercises, meditation. Her students are programmers, managers, everyday people from the neighborhood, all searching for that elusive work-life balance. For Guan, yoga isn't just a way to make a living, it's a philosophy, a way to master the body, the mind, and the emotions. She hones every movement, perfecting her flexibility. Her physical condition becomes a source of awe among her peers. A 40-minute headstand? Effortless. An aerial split? No problem at all. On the surface, it was the life of a typical middle-class immigrant. A rented apartment, a roster of clients, morning jogs along the bay. Nothing out of the ordinary, and certainly nothing to foreshadow the tragedy to come. The year is 2018. Guan returns home to China, but not for a vacation or to see family. She's chasing her first true summit, her target, Queer Shan. It translates to Bird Mountain, 6,168 meters of ice and rock in the Sichuan province. This is no walk in the park. It's a serious undertaking, and she knows it. That's why she joins a commercial expedition. With experienced guides and a group of people just as obsessed as she is, the air changes. It becomes thin, sharp, ringing. Every step is a small victory. Every breath, a conscious effort. Her body protests. Her head pounds from the lack of oxygen. But what she sees with her own eyes changes everything. Endless peaks piercing the clouds. A dazzling emptiness where there's nothing but you, your team, and the mountain. And then she's at the summit. The exhaustion vanishes. All that's left is a pure, deafening sense of triumph. She looks down, and the world she once knew is just a hazy memory far below. All her old goals, her career ambitions, the hustle and bustle of the big city. Suddenly they all seem so small, so insignificant. They slip away like sand through her fingers. And in that moment, something clicks. A switch flips in her mind. And it's permanent. Her husband would later pinpoint this year as the beginning, the start of what he, with a mix of a smile and a little bit of worry, calls her obsession. For him, this was the year his wife found something in the mountains, something more than just a hobby. She found a new version of herself. This ascent didn't end at the summit. For Guan, it was just beginning. And so, what started out as a single climb soon became a system, a whole new rhythm for her life. Now, her calendar is dictated not by office deadlines, but by the monsoons and weather windows in the Himalayas. The years between 2018 and 2023 became a time of pilgrimage for Guan, but her Mecca isn't an ancient city. It's a base camp at the foot of the world's highest mountains, Nepal, Kathmandu, Lukla. These names become more familiar to her than the metro stations in Taipei. She returns here again and again, as if drawn by an invisible magnet. This isn't just tourism. Each trip is a calculated part of a bigger plan. She goes on dozens of treks, but not for the beautiful photos. This is work, hard, methodical work on her own body. It's as if she's calibrating her system, tuning it like a rare musical instrument to perform in the thin air. High-altitude acclimatization. That's her main goal. She's learning to breathe where most people struggle just to stand. She's learning to walk when every step feels like her boots are filled with lead. And this is where a gray area appears in her story. We know that for training, she summits several 6,000ers. They're stepping stones, a way to test her strength before taking on the truly great heights. But try to find their names in any public database. Nothing. Her name doesn't pop up in the official registries of climbers. It's as if she's deliberately covering her tracks, unwilling to turn her personal journey into a public race for records. For her, this isn't a sport. It's a dialogue with the mountain, a very personal, almost intimate one. In this icy chaos where the wind shreds your gear and the cold freezes your resolve, she has a secret weapon. Breath. Control. Something she brought with her from another life, from the world of yoga. During breaks while other climbers are trying to stay warm, she rolls out her mat right on the snow and holds her asanas. This flexibility of mind and body allows her to remain calm where others would panic. It's during these years that her unique style takes shape. Guan Jing doesn't rush ahead, overtaking the guides. She's the ideal commercial client, one who follows the rules and listens to her guides. But with one key difference, she has the kind of endurance that many professionals would envy. She just keeps going, steady, stubborn, without complaint, step by step, hour after hour. And while others give up, she keeps climbing. And then comes the spring of 2024, the time for the big test. Years of training, acclimatization, quiet personal victories. All of it was just preparation for one single decisive moment. She's no longer the novice searching for herself. Now, she is an athlete in peak condition, with a clear goal and a meticulously crafted plan. She makes her choice, one of the most respected outfits in the game. Imagine Nepal. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a calculated move. She's entrusting her life to a team of professionals, people who know this mountain like the back of their hand. The route is a classic, the legendary southern path through Nepal, following in the footsteps of the very first to make the climb, Tenzing and Hillary. They were the first people in history to stand on top of the world's highest peak. Guan Jing's group is international, 9 clients from all over the globe, and 10 veteran Sherpas who call these slopes home. Right from the start, Guang proves to be the ideal client. She doesn't argue, she doesn't demand special treatment. She just gets the work done, and everyone can see it. The first serious test is the Khumbu Icefall. Imagine a river of ice that decided to revolt, freezing mid-chaos. It's a massive labyrinth of house-sized blocks of ice, constantly shifting, creaking, and groaning. Crossing it is like walking on the back of a sleeping dragon that could wake up at any moment. The team moves at night, when the bitter cold holds the ice together. Here, with her calm demeanor and precise movements, Guang is in her element. She doesn't panic. She breathes, step, inhale, ice axe, exhale. Her inner discipline is her armor. Next comes the methodical ascent through the high-altitude camps. Each camp is a tiny island of life in an ocean of cold and thin air. The body slowly acclimatizes to the lack of oxygen, but it pays a heavy price. Weakness, headaches, a constant crushing fatigue. But Guan Jing maintains her steady, almost meditative pace. The veteran Sherpas, who've seen hundreds of clients break at this altitude, exchange glances of respect. This woman is built differently. May 12th, the moment of truth. From Camp 4, the last outpost before the summit, the team begins their final push. All around is an inky blackness, broken only by the thin string of headlamps snaking its way up into the heavens. This is the zone where the body no longer recovers. It's just burning through its final reserves. Every breath is a battle, every step an act of will. But this is the exact moment she spent 5 years preparing for. And then, through the icy wind and the pre-dawn gloom, she sees her goal, the roof of the world, 8,848 meters. She's standing on the summit of Mount Everest. A 5-year marathon that started in a stuffy office ends right here, at the point where the Earth meets the cosmos. But for Guang, this isn't the end. It's a culmination. The culmination not just of a climb, but of an entire philosophy. Most climbers on the summit weep. They embrace. They unfurl flags. They have only a few precious minutes before the deadly altitude forces them to start back down. Time here is the most valuable resource. And so, at this very moment, when every second counts, Guang turns to her Sherpa and says something he absolutely did not expect to hear. "Help me, I want to do a headstand." The Sherpa, who in his time has seen euphoria, panic, and all kinds of strange rituals, freezes for a moment. A headstand? Here? Where every extra ounce of energy could cost you your life? A brain starved for oxygen struggles to coordinate even the simplest movements. But he doesn't see madness in her eyes. He sees steel, pure determination. This isn't just a whim. It's part of her journey. He nods. She carefully slips off her oxygen mask, takes a deep, searing breath, and with her partner's help, she flips her world upside down. There, on that tiny patch of the summit, surrounded by the abyss and an inky black cosmos, she holds it. A perfect balance. Her body, a finely tuned instrument, responding even in these inhuman conditions. The click of a camera shutter freezes the moment in time. 20 seconds that feel like an eternity in the thin air. This image, captured at nearly 9 kilometers high, begins its own dizzying ascent. From base camp, it travels out into the world, hitting Chinese social media like a digital avalanche. The impact is beyond anything they could have imagined. Headlines scream, "The first person to do a headstand on the summit of Everest." This is more than just an athletic achievement, it's performance art. The photo and a short video go viral. Millions of people see more than just a climber. They see a symbol of absolute freedom and fearlessness. To them, this woman, floating upside down above the world, becomes the living embodiment of a phrase she often repeated, "Live with no regrets." Her public persona is born in that very moment, vibrant, bold, a stereotype breaker. She didn't just conquer the mountain, she left her own unique, audacious signature on it for the whole world to see. But getting to the top is only half the battle. Every climber knows the summit is a trap. It lures you in, gives you a rush of euphoria, and then demands a price for every minute spent in its embrace. And that price is the descent. It's the most dangerous part of any expedition. Your body is running on empty, and your mind is teetering on the edge of sleep and reality. The photos have been taken, the flags are packed away. The world below is already celebrating your victory, but for you, the real fight has just begun. For Guan, it begins on the stretch between Camp 4 and Camp 3, deep in the heart of the death zone. The euphoria of the headstand is long gone, replaced by monotonous, grueling work. Step, breathe, another step, ice axe. Her body, completely wrung out, is moving on pure autopilot, and in this mechanical routine, a new insidious threat begins to emerge. It starts as just a slight tickle in her throat. Then, a dry cough sets in. The high-altitude air, dried out by the bottled oxygen and the freezing temperatures, is irritating her airways. Phlegm thickens in the cold, and after another coughing fit, something blocks her throat. She can't breathe in. The oxygen mask is useless. She tries to call out to her Sherpa, but her voice won't work. He turns, but doesn't immediately realize what's happening. To him, she's just standing still. Nearly 30 minutes pass before a violent spasm finally clears her airway, and she can breathe again. She coughs, and air finally rushes back into her lungs. That first breath, after minutes of suffocating, was pure salvation. To the world, she was a hero, the woman who conquered Everest. But it was right there, on the way down, with no cameras, no one watching, that she faced the real test of her will. What could be more dangerous than suffocating on the slopes of Everest? Well, maybe just one thing, a mountain that's known to be even tougher. For Guan Jing, this close call wasn't a warning shot. Quite the opposite. It gave her a new purpose. Once she was home and had recovered, she announced her next goal, to climb K2, the world's second highest peak, but the most dangerous and technically demanding of all the 8,000ers. And that's when Guan came up against a completely different kind of mountain, one made not of rock and ice, but of spreadsheets and bills. Climbing K2 is astronomically expensive. You've got the permit, the gear, the Sherpa support, the logistics of getting to a remote corner of Pakistan. The costs are just staggering. And this is where a cruel irony comes into play. In the world of mountaineering, there's another famous Chinese climber, a woman who shares her name, Guan Jing, a millionaire who could fund an expedition like this as a simple line item in her budget. But that wasn't Guan's reality. She didn't have sponsors with deep pockets. Every single yuan counted. And so, to fund her dream, she did something that might seem almost humbling after conquering Everest. She started a crowdfunding campaign. She was reaching out to the world, asking strangers to help her buy a ticket to the most dangerous mountain on Earth. But the steepest wall she would have to climb wasn't in the Karakoram range. It was in her own home. Her husband, who had watched her struggle on Everest with his heart in his throat, was dead set against it. To him, this wasn't an adventure anymore. It was a dance with death. When he looked at her, he didn't see a hero. He saw the woman who had almost left him a widower. His arguments were simple and devastatingly logical. "We can't afford it," he'd say. "It's not just the money. It's a risk you have no right to take. You almost died up there, and now you want to go somewhere even more dangerous? What about us?" Their conversations became a battleground where two worlds collided, the world of rational fear and love versus the world of an irrational dream and a duty to oneself. He talked about their future. She talked about a present lived with no regrets. He would show her the bills, the mortality rates for K2. She would just look him in the eye and repeat her mantra: "If I don't try this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And that life won't feel whole." To him, her philosophy was selfish. To her, it was the only way she could breathe. And in an argument like this, there's no right or wrong. Just two people looking at the same summit and seeing two completely different things. He saw a tombstone. She saw life itself. In the end, her will proved stronger than granite. She made her decision. The crowdfunding campaign went live, and now she had two mountains to climb: the icy summit of K2 and the summit of misunderstanding with the person she loved most. The money was raised. The arguments with her husband, if not resolved, were at least put on hold. In the summer of 2025, Guan Jing stepped off a plane in Pakistan. The air here was different from Nepal. It was drier, sharper. It smelled of ancient rock and of risk. She's back with the Imagine Nepal team, led by the legendary Mingma Ji, the man who saw her at her absolute limit on Everest, and yet still believed she was ready for more. On paper, everything was perfect: a seasoned guide, a solid team, and her own willpower, forged in the thin air of high altitudes. But there's one variable you can never plan for: the mountain's personality. And right away, K2 shows its teeth. Instead of the icy breath they expected, the Karakoram greets the expedition with an anomalous, suffocating heat. The sun is so relentless, the glaciers begin to weep, transforming into raging torrents. For the climbers, this isn't just discomfort. It's a death sentence for the route. It's as if the mountain is shedding its own icy skin. What had been locked in permafrost for centuries is now thawing and starting to move. Refrigerator-sized boulders break loose, whistling down the very paths the climbers need to take. The route, especially the infamous bottleneck, becomes a deadly bowling alley where the climbers are the pins. Even the seasoned Sherpas sent to fix the ropes, that thin lifeline to the summit, are forced to turn back time and time again. Climbing higher is sheer madness. One after another, avalanches of wet, heavy snow come crashing down, and all the teams find themselves trapped. Base camp, that colorful nylon town on a gray glacier, turns into a waiting room at the edge of the world. The days blur into one long, nerve-wracking routine. Breakfast, check the weather. A short acclimatization hike. Lunch, check the weather again. The tension hangs in the thin air, thicker than fog. Climbers from all over the world look at each other, then up at the imposing peak, and the same question is reflected in all their eyes. Are we even going to get a shot at this? So, what about Guan? In the middle of this paralyzing weight, she finds her own way of coping. She opens her laptop and writes social media posts for the thousands of people who believed in her and gave her this chance. She posts photos of herself smiling, drinking tea in front of an icefall, describes life in the camp, and talks about the beauty of these wild mountains, all while maintaining an unshakable optimism. She smiles for the camera, even as another avalanche thunders down behind her. To the world, she's still the same unbreakable fighter. But every new day spent at the foot of the mountain eats away not only at supplies and the budget, but also at the precious time of the short climbing season. The window of opportunity is melting away just as fast as the glaciers above their heads. Week after week, the mountain said no. And then, at the very beginning of August, it suddenly whispered, maybe. The weather forecast, which the climbers were refreshing more often than they took a breath, finally shows a tiny window, a few days of stable, clear weather. This isn't an invitation, it's an ultimatum, now or never. The atmosphere in base camp changes instantly. The sluggish waiting is replaced by a feverish but quiet hustle. Everyone knows this is their only shot. And so, on August 5th, as the first light of dawn breaks, a caravan of brightly colored down jackets sets off. They are leaving base camp, and every step upward is a step into the unknown. Camp 1, then 2. The body remembers this altitude, lungs burning with the icy air, but it's a familiar ache, the kind that comes with the work. It's better than the paralyzing unknown waiting down below. With every upward step, the world below shrinks away, becoming a map of rock and ice. The only reality is the slope beneath your boots and the back of the climber just ahead. But K2 is more than just a snowy slope. Soon the route runs up against the Black Pyramid, a vast fortress of black, jagged rock. This is where the familiar trek with crampons ends, and the real climbing begins. The climbers pull off their heavy mitts, needing to feel the cold handholds. Their breath hangs in the air, settling in white puffs against the dark stone. It's slow, grueling work, pushing the very limits of human endurance. And this section is crowned by the infamous house's chimney. Picture a narrow, near-vertical crack in the ice and rock. You have to literally wedge your entire body inside and, pushing off with your back and feet, squirm your way upward. It's like trying to squeeze through the eye of a needle at 7,000 meters, every muscle screaming from the lack of oxygen. It's right here, after conquering this grueling obstacle, that Guan pauses for a moment. She musters the strength to snap a photo and send a quick message. A photo of the sheer cliff face appears on her Instagram with a caption full of unshakable faith. This is so hard, but step by step, we will get there in the end. There's no fear in those words, no doubt. Just the steely resolve of someone who can see the summit and knows there's no turning back now. The only way is up, to Camp 3, and then into the zone where humans are merely visitors, and for not very long. Days pass, Camp 3, then Camp 4, the final outpost of civilization on the slopes of the Savage Mountain. Up here, at nearly 8,000 meters, the air is so thin it feels brittle, like glass. Every movement requires a titanic effort of will. Every single breath is precious. And then, it's August 11th. The night is blacker than the abyss, scattered with cold, sharp stars. In the beams of their headlamps, a group of 15 climbers, looking like ghostly figures in their puffy down suits, begins the final push. This is the point of no return. The path to the summit leads right through it, the infamous bottleneck. It's a narrow, near-vertical couloir, wedged between walls of rock, and looming directly over it is a gigantic serac, a massive multi-ton block of compressed ice that seems to be held in place by nothing more than a prayer. This isn't just a difficult section of the climb. It's Russian roulette at 8,200 meters. Every step beneath this icy giant is a gamble against time and gravity. The only sounds are the crunch of crampons on the snow and the sound of desperate, ragged breathing. Everyone knows you can't linger here. As soon as the sun comes up, it will start to warm the ice, and this sword of Damocles could fall at any second. The hours stretch on. One step, one breath. Another step, 2 more breaths. The world narrows to the beam of your headlamp, carving out a small patch of the slope and the back of your teammate just ahead. But the slope gets steeper and steeper, and then, suddenly, the slope begins to level out. The ground beneath their feet is no longer rising, and then suddenly a boundless expanse opens up before them. It's 3:32 p.m. Pakistan time. They've reached the summit. Guan Jing takes one final step and stops. The entire world is spread out beneath her. The sharp peaks of the other Karakoram giants look like tiny spikes, punching through the clouds. The horizon bends, and you can actually see the curvature of the earth. There's no euphoria, no shouts of joy. At this altitude, the body just doesn't have the energy for that. There's only a quiet, all-consuming sense of accomplishment. She's standing on the summit of K2, the second highest mountain on the planet, but number 1 for its savage, untamable reputation. The entire team, 15 people, including the incredible Sherpas, shares this moment. It's an incredibly rare achievement for late August. a time when the mountain usually seems to be shutting its doors for the winter. But they managed to slip through that final window, proving that sometimes the human spirit is stronger than rock and ice. The summit is only halfway. In mountaineering, that's not just a saying. It's a brutal axiom. No one stays at the summit for more than a few minutes, just enough time to snap a few photos, soak in a moment that will never come again, and then, immediately, head back down. Up here, time is the most precious and scarcest resource you have. The group begins their descent. Their mission? To get through the death zone as fast as possible, the altitude where the body can't recover, where it just slowly shuts down. Once again, they're under the icy sword of Damocles. They're back in the bottleneck, but this time, everything is different. On the way up, they battle darkness and cold, racing against the dawn. Now, the sun is their greatest enemy. Its rays are already beating down on the giant serac hanging over their heads. You can hear the sound of dripping water. Every single drop is like the ticking of a clock. They need to move fast, but they have almost no strength left. Their legs feel like lead. Their heads are pounding from the lack of oxygen. Step by step, clinging to the fixed ropes, they make their way through the couloir. When the last person clears the overhanging ice, the collective sigh of relief is so loud, you could almost hear it all the way down at base camp. But here's the paradox of mountaineering. 80% of all tragedies don't happen on the way up. They happen on the way down. The body is depleted, concentration wanes, and the mountain offers no forgiveness for mistakes. They spend the night at one of the high camps. A single tent, lost in a sea of ice at nearly 8,000 meters, feels like a five-star hotel. The body, which has been running on pure adrenaline, finally gets a break and begins to scream with pain and exhaustion. The morning of August 12th. Exhaustion is mixed with relief. The most dangerous sections are behind them. Ahead lies a long, but what should be, a straightforward path back home to base camp. But the mountain has one more surprise in store for them, and what looks like a gift from the heavens is about to become a death trap. An abnormal, almost unthinkable heat wave slams into the slopes of K2. The sun transforms from a source of life into a relentless destroyer. The ice, that ancient glue that has held the rocks of the Abruzzi Spur together for millennia, begins to melt at a catastrophic rate. The route itself is literally coming alive. What was a solid frozen slope just yesterday is now a slushy mess of wet snow and ice. An unsettling rumble is heard more and more often, a sound that quickly grows into a deafening roar. That's not the wind. It's the sound of rockfall. The mountain is starting to shed its armor. Every rock, from tiny pebbles to boulders the size of a car, is hurtling down at breakneck speed. They're making their way down a mountain that's literally crumbling beneath their feet. The trap isn't closing behind them. It's snapping shut right now, with every single step. By the evening of August 12th, they've made it below Camp 1. Picture this. Behind them are the ice falls, the sheer cliffs, and the infamous bottleneck, a section that drains every last bit of your strength and nerve. Here, below 6,500 meters, the slope becomes more gentle, and the air doesn't feel quite so thin, so hostile. This is the home stretch. The same thought is echoing in every climber's mind. We made it. The worst is over. Psychologically, it's a comfort zone, the gateway to the safety of base camp. You're almost home, almost. And that is where K2's most treacherous trap lies. If you look at the cold, hard numbers, the statistics of tragedies over the years, this section is practically a green zone. The real game of Russian roulette with the ice, the deadliest gambles, they play out much higher up, at Camp 3, on the Traverse, and, of course, beneath the massive ice serac in the bottleneck. Incidents here, on the way to advanced base camp, are so rare you could almost write them off as a statistical anomaly, a freak accident. But the mountain doesn't care about statistics. It writes its own rules, in real time. And today, the rules have changed. The climbers are utterly exhausted. Their bodies are stretched taut like violin strings, their minds hovering somewhere between exhaustion and reality. Every downward step is an immense effort, but it's that very feeling of approaching safety that dulls their senses. The survival instinct that was screaming at them up in the death zone has now faded to a quiet whisper. All they can think about is hot tea, a warm meal, the chance to just lie down and stop moving. Their brains are desperately searching for positive signs, and they're finding them. The slope is gentler, the air is thicker. It feels like they can finally relax. But it's in this exact moment, as their guard comes down, that the mountain prepares its final, most unexpected strike. They press on, unaware that the worst isn't over. The worst isn't the altitude or the cold. The worst is the illusion of safety when you're so close to the finish line. They aren't just descending a slope. They are walking into an anomaly, a place where the old rules and all their past experience no longer apply. The mountain, transformed by the relentless sun, is dictating its own final terms. And then, it happens. The moment the illusion shatters with a deafening roar. They're moving in single file, focusing on each footstep, the only sounds being the crunch of snow and their own ragged breaths. The afternoon sun, which had felt like a blessing, a source of life-giving warmth, had actually been doing its silent, destructive work high above them all along. It was melting the icy cement that had held the rocks in a monolithic grip for centuries. And then, a sharp whistling sound cuts through the silence. Not the rumble of an avalanche. No, not the roar of a collapsing sea rack. A single crack, followed by the short, vicious whistle of something hurtling towards them. It lasts less than a second, a split second, not even long enough for the brain to register danger. One of the climbers up ahead simply stumbles and collapses into the snow. Without a scream, without a struggle, he just goes out. The others freeze, staring at the motionless figure. It's Guan Jing. A fist-sized rock, hurtling at an insane speed, had found its mark with fatal precision. A direct hit to the head. This is what climbers call a freak accident, a cruel, unpredictable twist of fate, a tragedy that was impossible to foresee or prevent. Here, at an altitude of about 5,300 meters, where they thought the mountain's demons had been left behind, the mountain dealt its cruelest blow. A ringing, deafening silence hangs in the air. The others are fine, not a scratch. But the shock is more paralyzing than any cold. They had just escaped the clutches of the death zone, survived the oxygen-starved air, the vertical walls, the icy traps. They had beaten the mountain in a fair fight, but the mountain had stabbed them in the back, a cheap shot, delivered just as they were celebrating their victory. That realization shatters something inside them. There is no fair play. There is only the mountain and blind chance. When the team's medic reaches Guan Jing, he can only shake his head. It was all over in an instant. And now they face the cruelest choice imaginable. The sun is beginning to set. Their own strength is fading. Getting the body down from this altitude, across this terrain, would be a grueling, high-risk operation, one that could easily cost the rest of the team their lives. So they make the only choice they can, a heartbreaking one, following the unwritten law of the high peaks. The body stays on the slope. They have to go down to survive. Slowly, as if in a dream, the group turns and continues its descent, leaving behind not just a comrade, but a symbol of the fact that on K2, you are never truly safe. Down below, at base camp, the news lands like a stone dropped from a great height. Shock gives way to frantic activity. It can't end like this. On August 13th, just a few days after the tragedy, a race against time begins. The recovery operation. There's only one hope, a helicopter. But here, at the foot of the Karakoram, the sky doesn't belong to birds. It belongs to the military. And they have their own rules. Any rescue flight is the monopoly of a single local company, a civilian division of the Pakistani army. They are the only air taxis in this wild land, and their pilots are true aces, capable of operating at the very edge of what man and machine can do. But a helicopter isn't just a machine. It comes with strict protocols, and this is where reality hits you like a slap in the face. It's not just about the weather, which around Case 2 changes faster than the mood of a fickle god. It's about the paperwork. To even get the helicopter's rotors spinning, you need one of two things: 100% confirmation from the insurance company, or, the faster option, a cash deposit. The price tag? Somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. The mountains don't take credit cards, and they don't believe in promises. Until that money is in the bank, the chopper stays grounded. Every hour they wait is another hour the body spends on the slope, while the weather just keeps getting worse. While the bureaucracy grinds on down below, up on the glacier, the team can't just sit around and wait. They decide to take matters into their own hands. A few of the toughest, most experienced climbers, Sherpas included, embark on a near impossible mission to bring the body down by hand from an altitude of 5,300 meters. It's grueling work. Every single step is a risk. They move slowly, with extreme caution, the body secured with ropes. And just then, the mountain, as if angry that they're trying to steal its prize, shows its teeth once again. The slopes above them come alive. A fresh rockfall, not as massive as an avalanche, but just as menacing, comes crashing down. Whistling shards of rock tear across the slope. Most of them manage to find cover, but one isn't so lucky. A Sherpa named Jiang Bu is hit by a piece of rock, severely injuring his leg. That's it. The operation is over. Now, they have to rescue one of their own, a living teammate, and just like that, they're back to square one. The body of the fallen climber, Guan, is still up there, and the mountain seems to be laughing at them, throwing rocks and demanding payment. It's painfully clear they can't do this without help from the air. And so, when the financial hurdle is finally cleared, when the money is wired and the bill is paid, it feels like they can finally breathe a sigh of relief. But they can't. The mountain presents a new obstacle, because this isn't just a mountain, it's a border, a living, breathing frontier, bristling with radar stations and military outposts. K2 stands at the crossroads of two worlds, in a zone of strategic interest for both Pakistan and China. Every movement in the air here is watched with the intensity of a hawk, and to get a helicopter in the air, an insurance guarantee isn't enough. You need military clearance, from the very top. A whole new chapter of the bureaucratic odyssey begins, only this time, the stakes are even higher. Requests fly from one office to another, from one command center to the next. Every signature, every rubber stamp, costs them precious hours. Finally, on August 16th, after 3 long days of fighting the system, the long-awaited green light comes through. All the paperwork is finally in order. With a roar of its rotors, the helicopter lifts off the ground. It's not just a machine, it's hope with wings. It climbs higher and higher until base camp shrinks to the size of a toy set below. The pilot, a true ace, guides his machine toward the spot where Guan's exhausted teammates manage to bring her body. Like a steel dragonfly, the helicopter hovers over the glacier, unable to land on the treacherous, uneven ice. A long line is lowered, and then, after days of agonizing waiting, the precious silent cargo is lifted into the air. The operation is complete. The fallen climber finally leaves the mountain that refused to let her go. The helicopter sets a course for Skardu, the nearest town with a hospital and an airfield. Her body is taken to a medical facility. The physical battle with the mountain was over. But now a different kind of odyssey was beginning, one of paperwork. Bringing her body home to China was a complex legal and diplomatic ordeal. Death certificates, official reports, export permits. For Guang, the journey home would prove to be far longer than the journey to the summit. News of the tragedy spread quickly across the globe. It started with a short piece in the local press, but was soon picked up by international news agencies. The story was filled with a bitter irony. The woman who had conquered Everest didn't die at the summit, battling the elements. She died from a single misstep on a section of the glacier she had already passed. It was a detail that made the tragedy all the more piercing. The line between triumph and finality, separated by a single moment. Back in China, the news hit especially hard. Guan Jing wasn't just an athlete. She had become a symbol. Everyone remembered her famous photographs, doing a headstand against a backdrop of snow-capped peaks. It wasn't just a flashy stunt. She used to say it was a way to see the world differently, to truly grasp the majesty of the mountains. Now, those images took on a whole new meaning. Her husband, Liu, gave an interview, and in his voice, you could hear not just grief, but a profound sense of pride. He didn't talk about records or athletic achievements. He talked about her laugh, which he said could melt any glacier. He talked about how she would spend hours just gazing at the stars above their camp, finding more meaning in them than in all the city lights below. He described a woman who didn't climb to prove anything to others, but to be in a conversation with herself and with eternity. To him, she wasn't gone. She had simply stayed where her heart had always longed to be. And as her family mourned, a heated debate was igniting within the climbing community and beyond. Guan Jing's death became a catalyst, forcing people to ask uncomfortable questions. Had the commercialization of mountaineering gone too far? Were the world's most dangerous peaks becoming conveyor belts, with expert guides leading droves of clients, many of them unprepared for the true risks, to the summit? And what did this warm and supposedly safer season on K2 really mean if it made the glaciers unstable, and the price for a single mistake remained just as final? Her death forced everyone to reconsider. Where is the line between bold adventure and reckless risk? And while the debates raged on, the official record tried to set things straight. So, what remains when all is said and done in the cold, hard stats of her achievements? Guan Jing is credited with summiting two 8,000ers, Everest and K2. But even here, in her posthumous fame, she's shrouded in a fog of confusion. In the flood of news reports, her name was constantly mixed up with two other famous Chinese climbers. The first was Guan Jing, the co-owner of an outdoor gear giant, a woman with virtually unlimited resources who saw the mountains as part of a massive business enterprise. The second, He Jing, was an ascetic purist who summited without supplemental oxygen, treating climbing as a pure sport, almost a spiritual practice. This whole mix-up isn't just some unfortunate error by journalists. It obscures the most important part of the story. You see, Guan Jing was neither of those people. She wasn't a tycoon, nor was she some elite, state-sponsored athlete. She was from the middle class, an ordinary office worker who fell in love with the mountains, and year after year, she saved every penny to make her dream a reality. She's the exact kind of client on these commercial expeditions that everyone is always debating. But she was a client who came to the mountain not to tick a box on a list, but because she was answering a call from deep within. And that's what makes her story more than just a tragedy. It's the profound drama of an ordinary person who dared to aim for something extraordinary, shattering her own personal ice ceiling. The official report from the Pakistani authorities is brief and cold, an accident caused by rockfall. No conspiracy theories, no accusations of negligence. Just the mountain, living a life of its own. But it's this very simplicity that's so terrifying. Her final moments weren't on some vertical ice wall or up in the death zone. They were on a relatively flat stretch of the glacier, practically on the main path. It's the kind of place where you mentally start to exhale, where your focus begins to soften. And in that moment, it's as if K2 itself is reminding us all. The mountain doesn't separate its slopes into dangerous and safe. To the mountain, it's all its territory, and the rules are the same everywhere. And so, Guan Jing's story becomes a textbook example of the savage mountain's unpredictability. But for those who knew her, what matters most isn't the reason she's gone, but the way she lived. Shortly before her final expedition, she wrote a phrase that now reads like both an epitaph and a final testament. No regrets in life. And in those words, you find her essence. A person who chose the short, brilliant path to her dream, over the long, safe road far from it. What are your thoughts on this tragedy? Share them in the comments. We'd be really interested to hear your perspective.